Why did we even come to this country? As though I was the war, as though I was the bomb backdrop in her dreams. That first time I cut my hair short, follicles to the floor, mother crowed, why, my little girl, where is my child? Picture me, Nina, picture me on my knees, pleading to prove that I wasn't the ghost. 3. There are no gay children in the heart of mothers like mine, just mistakes. Killable kin, my people, don't make headlines. You know what it is to get a Facebook message, Twitter, Instagram post, text message with the face of the dead friend, pupil, comrade. Glare grief, but you laughed with them. Weeks earlier, months earlier, how? I saw them at the protest or fundraiser. 4. I was about 18 when my friend A flung themselves off a cliff. Brown boys don't turn into men without fighting men on stoops, blood varnished at house parties by men cousins, by men uncles, by men umpire, by men government. A teenager thought better to face the rocks of California bluff could be more solace than the frowns of their own blood family. 5. A bluff. A bluff is a double entendre for precipice, as in calling your, sometimes considered scam, a sham. Bluff, also known as out loud, as in forthright. See also bordering a river, coastal crest, my gender, so brazen, we must be silenced, surrendered. Tell me, please, can you hear us? Trying not to shatter into the ground. All right, Foglifter, thank you so much. This is my last poem. I'm so excited to see Felida, Muriel, everyone on here. So this is my last poem. Tell a child about something that causes you fear or dread, with gratitude to Samia Bashir. It's okay to just be wound sometimes. Be gape, be cry, be rock, shiver, rumble, to be ramshackle, to shiver, to shake ancestors in your sleep, to be part dead. Be razor, to lash, to be hammer, be hang, be the thing that flails, be cathedral, to be cobstone, to speak cobweb. Let me tell you, to die every day is the kind of pulse that makes music, to be the kid that leans against books more than people, to be the book as it opens and closes, folds in on itself on the same paragraph, to be that underlined stanza whose body bursts syntax scars naked, love body, when it emblazons family curse. When you are bad joke at the table, when you are shuffled scrapes of forks, that weirdo told to shut up, too crazy, forsaken. Let lonely make a lens so clear, you become intergalactic. Let residue be blanket you shed every season. Let gaze be salve and the sign of the cross. Let you be blessing no one understands. Let you be words a stranger waits for. Let you be bunker you crawl into. Let you guffaw. Let you cackle. Let you be last one left. Let you be last one. Let you be last. Let you be. Let you. Let. Thank you so much, friends, queers, and siblings. Have a good night.
Thank you so much, Kay. That was a wonderful, powerful reading. Thank you. Up next, we have Muriel Leung. Muriel Leung is the author of Imagine Us, The Swarm, forthcoming from Nightboat Books and Bone Confetti, winner of the 2015 Noemi Press Book Award. She's the poetry co-editor of Apogee Journal. She also co-hosts the Blood Jet Writing Hour podcast with Rochelle Cruz and NT Villarda. She's a member of Marisa Collective, a Feminist Speakers Bureau. And Andrew W. Mellon Humanities in a Digital World Fellow. She is completing her PhD in creative writing and literature at the University of Southern California. She's from Queens, New York. Here's Muriel.
Hi, thank you. Let's not have the ring light fall here. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Foglifter, for having me here. Following case example, a captioned visual description of myself. I have green shoulder-length wavy hair and a side cut, and I am a Chinese American queer cis woman with septum ring and dun brows, and a tattoo on my right shoulder of a floral pattern. And there's animals behind me and a giant plant. Thank you so much, Foglifter, again. Foglifter published some of the poems that are in my forthcoming book today, Imagine Us to Swarm. It will be released on May 25th, and I'm excited to read from it today. This book means a lot to me, and there's a couple of poems I wanted to read from the last section, which is called When I Imagine All the Possibilities of the Swarm. And each of these poems begin with the same refrain, which is suppose. And these are all poems that are ways of reimagining different outcomes for historical, personal harm, and a way to sort of imagine a better future. So, content note for mentions of domestic violence, intimate partner violence, and sexual violence. And yeah, let's start. Suppose we try to make a house of snow and failure. In the light, the violence glows translucent as a cellophane bark. The generations staggered along a line. I tap along the window frame, the ice pricking me back. The pail of us collecting water from above in its slow drip. It runs cold like this for years, neither one of us suspecting, and this is how it happens. Each day of his youth, my father checked the canister of rice, watching the levels dip. He labored. Hunger bore a hole through him. To each member in his family he fed. He was so small when his unborn sister began. A fine grain in the womb that would not feed, would only take. He told my grandmother, remove her. For the sake of rice and the brittle rib. My grandfather made his fist sing into my father's face. But this is not the beginning. Before this, two cells collided in the early waters of a more humid time. And before this, the universe was the kernel of many vengeful gods. Before, if only to go back, to place the blame there. The plankton's wrath, the roach, and the sea. Through the layers of sky, a pinprick narrow of sun burns through the glacial walls. So much water, we cast ourselves out and out, the house to follow, a pooling brick. I take your hand. I plunge us into the snow. Whatever impressions we make will become true in its time. Suppose everybody I ever loved made up a tiny universe, in which each one thrived in your own planetary hues. I mistook each one for the central star, common mistake, and still I draped each of them in a garment of changing seasons. How many moons? I asked. They answered, and I supplied. The universe moved in strident form, each planet missing the other in orbit. I didn't intend to collapse a blue planet, still unfurling in its newness, but the layers of its life saw no future for water. I abandoned a dry well. I floundered. Years ago, the universe held a pale sun. It struck a match to every star-kissed body, and in its stillness was painful as glass. I thought falling in love meant white hot, but that was only a fraction of the universe, of time. I felt the shadow first when I pleaded, eclipse me. It was a chaos of spurs, and it burned. It came and went, and in returning, begged the spun miracle of rings. There would be no end to this carrying. For them, I knew I would always wait. Turning my body over, I saw the universe was halved, its noisy assemblage sliding towards collision. I held the planets close. I pressed their gaseous swarms to ruckus mass. I did this so they would believe me. Having endured the labor of the current, the universe was fast expanding. It needed to fold. Even I could not bear it. I surrendered, and I loved them all. Suppose the impact was a bell, a warning instead moving through a hollow factory. The violence of men and the colonial rituals of their past were a lesson. In the pedagogy of grief, the earth was good, and then history, the stalwart chemicals of its wake, still seeps in the soil. Would we not reverse that too if we could? The atomic weight of him pressed so deep into my torso that generations after would feel the soreness of ribs. Suppose my grandfather never struck my aunt, because her cheek was there, and my father, in his piety to the self-same heaving, did not instead tell her to move out of the way. Because I was born witnessing, and in my queerness still desire the love of these masculine injuries, I listened too closely and was lost. The pattern undulates and recedes. Suppose I became the sound of wind chimes, crashing into the ground, startling the other body there that would not move. The ghost of my future visits my past and tells her, "You have to be brave." I could fortify my life this way. My allegiance to the bone, its refusal as instruction, will buoy me when memory is not enough. To feel even now the soft impressions of many thumbs. They are not the violence I remember. There is nothing left to forgive. And this last one. Suppose there is an end to our suffering. Like a chariot, the absence of grief circles us with the obstinate heat of the largest star. To believe in the radiant orbit of this fire, to face an empty cup and find the constellated mire of you and me and the toppling of a century. We rise from the painful corridors of a life. Rarely did we dream of planetary rings, and yet, tilting ourselves up, we see the heavenly bodies of all that has passed, each one bright with surrender. We can go on. We can dress ourselves in the celestial cloak of this wide expanse, every woman and femme, and the disorder of the peel. I will never write another elegy again. I am looking at you now in the acceleration of time. All the possibilities of the swarm ignite, the humming of many wings amassing into a greater noise. We can write our origins sacred here and renounce the country of our fear. There is only our singular pulse when we fill the sky. Thank you so much.
That was amazing. I love we can renounce our fear. That ending of that poem. Wow, Muriel. Next up is Hazem Fahmy. Hazem is a Pushcart nominated writer and critic from Cairo. He runs Zamzoom, a monthly newsletter on Substack. He's currently pursuing his MA in Middle Eastern Studies and Film Studies from the University of Texas at Austin. His debut chapbook, Red Jilled Prayer, won the 2017 Diode Editions contest. A Kundiman and Watering Hole Fellow, his poetry has appeared or is forthcoming in Apogee, AAWW, the Boston Review, and the Offing. His performances have been featured on Button Poetry and Right About Now. Please welcome Hazem.
Hello, everyone. Really grateful to be here. Thank you so much to Foglifter for continuously supporting your contributors. It means a lot. To follow the example of my peers, just give a quick description of myself. I have short black hair, brown glasses, a beard, and I'm wearing a blue shirt. So most of about half the poems I'm reading are from a chapbook that will be coming out next year from Half Mystic Press called Waiting for a Frank Ocean in Cairo. It is about a lot of my experiences in my home city, but also the experience of returning to it and then returning back to the States and so on. This first poem is called Frank Haunts Me Across a Decade. Every other day, a phone call from across the world brings me to my knees. A micro sob story I recount in the mirror. Every time the connection cuts off, the sound evaporating like a stolen breath, Frank, being the specter of all my summers, the unmentionable shadow, dyed his hair green, and suddenly there was an entire field of possibilities, reminiscent of the constellation of clubs off the highway in Houston. From the airport, all worlds seem possible. One's lost and forgotten. I was never one for making a saint out of anything, let alone a man who makes music I cry to. On a rare cold morning in Austin, I biked to a theater, unsettlingly aware of my own temporal nature in Texas. In LA, Frank was the soundtrack to every car ride, even though I never played him once. In Houston, Frank haunted the stereo, became the call of the American night. I despise how wide the world seemed. The sheer unfathomability of a highway ending, let alone an ocean running out of water. I have known nights of ungodly solitude, yet I've also known the catastrophe of the unexpected phone call, that everyday shit. The concert was not the holy site I once let myself to believe. Music at the end of the day can only do so much. I am learning to call things disruptive instead of radical. Once hair, sweat, and bad breath became the monikers of the night, and it was intoxicating. My fear of the mosh pit never left. I never wanted a single house to be my world. I am still learning to forget the house I learned to cook in, the house I stopped speaking of love in, the house I learned to trust in hands other than mine in. The last couch I slept on said something about where I was with my father then. That time I listened. The cold walk home could be a slow hell, but it could also be a still kind of heaven. I no longer await the day I will be happy, and that is a stupid kind of progress. I have not forgotten that house. Wordlessly, I announced my desperation in that house. I claimed to dream of a still mind, but I was lying. If you had asked me what I wanted that year, I would have told you. I wanted to be loved, but even that would not have been enough. Perhaps the more honest answer would have been, I wanted the fleeting ecstasy only possible in the minutes of a Frank Ocean song. I wanted to admit that I was a mess in America and be okay with it. I wanted endless phone calls, to be harangued ceaselessly by those who needed me. I wanted, and I wanted, and I wanted. Thank you. The second poem is from a different project, and it is called Against Iconography. The singer referenced in this song is a incredibly popular Egyptian musician. Against Iconography. Forgive me for insisting that Kulthum was not a god. Her name was Fatma. She was born in the Ahliya. My best friend's great-grandfather was in love with her. For real, there's a book about them. It is somewhere in my house, gathering dust. The specter of the nation is all-encompassing. I care neither for the myth nor the legend. The eclipse of Kaukab al-Shar is still but shadow. An artist is not a country. I seek the woman who sang of restless nights of longing. The woman who transfixed my mother to the radio. I will not make a siren of the dead. I am not a passport. Soil, upon becoming larger than life, more abstract than dirt, has no hope of saving us. If we must seek gods, let them be borderless. If a love song must become battle cry, let it be one for the ages, open to all who seek refuge. My peoples, I invite you all to indulge in the audacity of loving your neighbor without an anthem. Had I been gifted music, I would have sung The Citizen away. Thank you. This poem is also from my Frank Ocean chapbook. It is a cento made up of different lines from across Frank Ocean songs. Don't die. I should say, and you should hear, I've loved. I took a seat on the ice cold lawn. I took a walk with the palm trees as the daylight fell. Every moment was so precious then. I'm Richard Gere in a tux, roaming around like I'm ready for a funeral. I'm about to drive in the ocean. The entire earth is fighting. All the world is at its end. Spaceships are lifting off of a dying world. There will be tears. That's American law. There wasn't room for you and I. Only you. Goodbye. Goodbye, land of the free. We are all mortals. Any moment this could go. Numb. Zero emotion, muted emotion, pitch corrected, computed emotion. I've no doubt this is the home of the brave, and millions are left behind while the sky burns. They don't mean too much. Cry, even though that won't change a thing. I can't feel a thing. I can't be there with you, talking to myself. Thank you. This poem is from the other collection that Against Iconography is from. It is very new, so it is currently untitled. I will be the first to confess that I have used that most elusive of words, diaspora, as a crutch, my country reduced to an image, two smiling actors, Omar Sharif and Fatin Hamema. Look how glamorous my country is. A star, beautiful and fancy, my country is a definable thing, a static landscape to which I dream of returning. Back home, I meet friends on the front line. X might get arrested. Y's friend is still missing. Z is still in jail. At least now his family knows where he is. My family mocks those hyphen Americans over there, worried about representation. If they're so worried about how we look in American movies, tell them to watch an Egyptian one, my father says. I say nothing. Nothing is that simple. My father thinks you can't get disappeared in America, and that is a lie. I curse every cop everywhere. In New York, I meet Egyptians who may never go back in this lifetime. There too, they know the terror of the badge. I curse every cop that ever was or ever will be. I pledge allegiance to a copless nation, that is, a nation that does not even exist, nor can it ever. Thank you. I have one more poem, one more short poem for that collection, and then one more Frank Ocean cento. So this poem is called Salat al-Subh, which is morning prayer in Arabic. I've never had a very straightforward relationship with faith. At this point, probably not been a religious person for most of my life, but right now it is Ramadan, and I've been thinking a lot about faith. So this is a poem, a relatively new poem as well about that. In the morning, afraid of the stillness that often refuses to body, I watch my veins, disturbed by their visibility. I regard a map on the wall and find hope in the endurance of the uncharted. Every full moon, I dream of becoming one with a monastery, unfazed by anything that does not concern cheese or wine or God. My mother asks me to put a rosary in my car, and I do not resist. She buys me a copy of the Book of God so that it may find a home in my glove compartment, and I do not complain. I kiss the book I have not read in a decade and leave it in the car. Thank you. And this last poem is another Frank Ocean cento. It's all downhill from here. I could hate you now, so low that I can admit it's hell on earth and the city's on fire. No, you can't make every equal. That start over right now. In the wake of a hurricane, you kneel down to the dry land. I can't believe you want to see Nirvana, but don't want to die yet. In the dark, it's a free world. I didn't care to state the plain, I'll be honest. I wasn't devastated, kept my mouth closed. I know you love to talk. If I was being honest, I'm not brave. You left when I forgot to speak, and that's life. Just like me, there were things you didn't need to say. We have good discussion, the start of nothing. Maybe I'm a fool, living so the last night feels like a past life. Acid on me like the rain. It was virtual, made no sense. After 20 years in, I'm so naive, I was under the impression I'd do anything for you. I could dream all night, drive all night. How far is a light year? Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Hazem. That was amazing. I've been crying to a lot of Frank Ocean, so that really hit me. So thank you. Our next reader is Czecho Bay Dunladi. Czecho Bay is the author of Semiotics, which was selected by Evie Shockley as the winner of the 2019 Cave Canem Poetry Prize. From Lagos by way of West Baltimore, she currently lives in Chicago. Please welcome Czecho Bay.
Thank you, Charlie. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Hazem, thank you so much for those poems. I was also definitely just listening to Frank Ocean before we got started this evening, so that felt right. It's a real treat to be sharing some space this evening with these amazing poets, with you amazing poets. It's very cool. Thank you, Louisa, and the whole team at Foglifter for being such champions of our work. Your support is deeply felt and appreciated. I will read 4 poems tonight, all from my recent debut, Semiotics, and then I'll be quiet so we can hear from everyone else. This first poem is called The Eventualities Come. The eventualities come, pitter-patter. The one who gave time its gifts has grown his hair long and stopped calling. There goes that smell haunting the neighborhood into easing, saying, fine. What must come to live at the extent of exhaustion? I'm full with what? What agenda? What politic? What fury as feral as the peppermint clinging to the baseboards? What patience that gives up on holding back tears, roars through the block, clutching blessed ice water and bulletproof glass, and backwoods to blaze wet lungs. Here comes fiendish desire. Come home to save your laugh on the voicemail. The second poem is called Known and Lesser Catastrophes. Used to displacement, one makes a fetish of abandon. Pardon me, my being, so evasive. Truth is every border is a trap. Everyone punishes by shouting, bi slut, bisected, bisexed, and gendered landscape. This is it, the life I love. Such an inconsiderate habitus. The worst fate follows being indigenous to any place. So some search for small conquests and comfort by adding politan or citizen to their name. One problem is how quickly we run opposed from each other. Another is empire's hideous and clumsy hands. False hopes wagered in naturalization and resettlement. This refugee era is akin to being bumpy, is akin to being adolescent, how bumpy. Surviving exile was only the first triumph. How now to make a condition of it? This bitterness, simply. Since many will counter their wealth against me, I demand my menial benefits, my boots, my mule, my ID card, my intact clit, capped tooth, bifocals, doctored papers, entry vaccines, but know that any hyphenated identity means just one has lost the war. What a shame, I betted. Be wary of any sub who aims to be president. Beware of any self-aware subaltern or permanent resident aliens or native patriots. A theorist appears to jot down how happily I rupture such well-stitched margins with my bloodstains. I let myself, the meat and offering to ancestors. Do bring along the cayenne and the curry when time comes to cook the rich. If that seems unethical, consider how so they are rich. In stability, I become slobbish and guard even my good senses from everyone. Ice queen with empath tendencies. Must you tend your own wounds? Or do you seek older solutions? When pained, gather nettles and eucalyptus for salves, bitter tonics, force an extraction, smudge, scry, conjure. Consider the cipher. There's no nation on this dome worth ailing for. This third poem is called Spontaneous Repulsion. Times look to us, a tensile hook and tug, taught best by the natural world's anguished kinks, bird in a gator's teeth, lush afterglow of unrepentant earth, having given itself to be scorched. Than us, who better to catalog our failures, having been inside each at the same time, grounded by eating overripe figs, thanking the table's barrier, asking aloud for coffee, a close call to feeling, a monophony of coyotes, this one brave as hell, strutting in hair all overripe, braved coming into hair hell. Come, my sickly smell. Pull the corner store still frame at its grubby edges. Our flower dress mid-thigh, waist beads showing through loosened buttonholes. The aroused hum of such hungry hours. Or because of our growing into mother's face, and of us who's not inclined. So asked some days to name a child, theoretically. Who but she knows tomorrow the name we'd give? An all right bet. But the body barks back constantly. Dark elbows, barbelled nipples clanking the plexiglass display. Swisher sweet, a bamboo bitch, skin lightening cream. Nothing cares to hold past one long maybe. Envision mother in ourself, in the whirl, holding back. The days we bit our lip in glue, when Ma's hand hovered over our childish heads, never still. Ma's hand pulling the plate too hard, initiating our apart. Thank you all so much. I'm going to read just one more poem. And this poem is called Ji Hao Shi. I was hammered the first night of Ramadan, guilty as if Allah believed in me, even if not. So many other outlets for discord, sex, purple Urkel, acupuncture, such practicality in things. I could have showered and had war sung out of me. My other name, Husseina, pressed like a razor to my temple, and I thought to lean into it, knowing for my people the many uses of the cow, milk, butter, meat. Against the tiles where I arrived, I shouted, "Slaughter, are you looking to marry? Why else come home? Menene mutum, if not someone to praise name the clots my gut sacrificed months earlier. I'll want that ache again, a hunger to walk the evening with." I was at my mother's ear while she killed anything. The cock's neck in her hand at 86's Eid. The flesh sacrifice mutual. So many pleasures guaranteed. So nothing beautiful ends here. Her largesse brought prone, me an oracle, awaiting questions elsewhere. Afflicted to hurt nothing but myself. She too withstood love's accretion by holding fingers to flame that dusk, wearing her body like a sin, only soothed by eating. Nono, munshanu, nama. Most of her is since covered, her kneeling pious, a soul belated in exchange for a scent and clean firmament. What is a man? One coming soon to hold night against her. Too early, it was that low blown wind, a worm up her skirt. Yet alone in the kitchen, she broke the fast anyway. Thank you all.
Wow, thank you. I think the first of those poems we published in Foglifter, and I remember first time I read it, and wow, I'm so blown away by all of you. Next up, we have Aldo Amparam. Aldo is the author of Brother Sleep, forthcoming from Alice James Books in 2022 and winner of the 2020 Alice James Award. He has received fellowships from the National Endowment for the Arts and Canto Mundo. His work most recently appears in the Academy of American Poets Poem a Day, Agni, Best New Poets, Plowshares, and elsewhere. He lives in the border cities of El Paso, Texas, Ciudad Juarez, Chihuahua, Mexico. Please welcome Aldo.
Thank you so much, Foglifter, for providing me this space to share my poems. Following my peers' examples, I have an undercut, a split dye, black and gray, and I'm wearing a motor jacket with a leopard print. The first poem I'm going to read is called Interrogation of the Sodomite. In Mexico City, in 1901, police detained 41 gay men at a dance. Many were subjected to slave labor. Since, in Mexico, the number 41 has been used in jokes and derogatory remarks against homosexuality. There are currently 6 countries where the death penalty is used for people in same-sex relationships: Iran, Saudi Arabia, Sudan, Yemen, Nigeria, and Somalia. Asked to remove my mask, I peeled off my face and let the world see. Inside, a dark made of edges. Asked how I could look myself in the mirror, I stood before a lake for days. My tongue dry stone. I drank all the water. Fish swam inside me for weeks. Tadpoles shat out my eyes in my sleep. Asked how I could dream of men, their waltzing legs, the 41 sharp cheeks blushing in the candle-lit dark. In Mexico, the 41 abdomen soaking a river with their shame. Less loving, I bit out my tongue, which shut in its silence to bruise and bloody. A loving man's forehead, to death in Saudi Arabia today, just for loving the dark edges in men. This next poem is called The Day I Came Out. Stains flowered the ceiling of my hotel room where I'd hardly slept. Sun leaked the inauguration of my new decade, and next to me a man I didn't know past the bends of his body stirred. I reclined beside myself in the shade to remember his face, exalted in my breath, and how his voice shook the mounting pressures of still waters as he said, I love you, though he'd never seen me before that night. I love you, with his gin and tonic, his winter fresh, his navel piercing, his elongated O's. I love you, he'd said, and maybe war ended with the word. I turned to his sun-smooth torso, asleep there, his abdomen, a roadmap of white space, clavicle, shoulder, tiny bird of a bruise in the droop of his back, and I thought maybe there's still time for celebration. My feature a sky blue terraria to display this ever burgeoning affection, not affliction, not affectation, nor consequence. I kissed the man's forehead and left him there, nameless, left with no number, only the memory of his skin and this brilliant yearning to be seen outside. The street pulsed shameless, so full of color, my body broke into a wave of electricity, merging seamlessly with the rest of the world. And this last poem is called This Room Will Still Exist. And it borrows the title from a line in Charlie Kaufman's Synecdoche, New York. In the beginning, a field broke grass from dark earth and fertilizer, but crops would not grow. The city crept closer. Before you and I were born, our hearts were ripe fruit dangling in a lonely woman's backyard. 94 years ago, a stranger slept with the window open. Fog surged into his room. Imagine waking from a dream of sky to sky. Tonight, your face vanished from my mind's unending mirror. A blue sadness replaced it, a sound, not your voice, not your laughter, but the wild echo of a shotgun. I strike my dresser's mirror, break off a shard the size of your head. There are 86 kinds of sadnesses in this room alone. I've counted each of them. The serpent standing upright to the height of the ceiling, the warm bear skulking in the corner, his fur matted in dust. I've grown a blue mantis the size of my hands. I've headed copper and hyacinth, and often the black caracara locked in the closet ululates at night. I'll carry the nightstand, carry the bed and the desk, the lamp and the moth circling the lamp to a new room in a new country. I'll wear a different tongue. I'll lacquer the moon. I'll build a bookshelf from the bark of a dead tree. I'll kiss a man. I'll kiss a man. I'll kiss and ask the moon, when did my brother become myth? His face a brown blotch in my dreams, his skin particles floating in sunlight. Some dull hour in the future, this alcove will be emptied of sound. In a still table, in a changing city, my humbled body will open for the last time at the hands of a stranger. I'll love them for this final act of surrender, for the kind stitch and staple. And later, these walls will hold in them the hum of two lovers, which is to say, two men or two women burrowing into each other's breath. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aldo. That was beautiful. All right. So our last reader of the night is Felida Hicks. Felida Hicks is the author of Hood Witch, a finalist for the 2020 Lambda Literary Award for Bisexual Poetry. A queer Afro-Latinx activist, writer, and interdisciplinary artist based in Central Texas, they are the former editor-in-chief of Borderlands Texas Poetry Review, and currently serve as the 2021 Poet in Residence for the Civil Rights Corps. They have been awarded fellowships and residencies from Broadway Advocacy Coalition, The Dots Between, Jack Jones Literary Arts, Lambda Literary, Tin House, and The Right of Return USA. Their work is featured or forthcoming in Adroit, American Poetry Review, the Cincinnati Review, Ecotone, HuffPost, Long Reads, Palette Poetry, Poetry Magazine, The Rumpus, Slate, Texas Observer, Vita Review, Yale Review, and others. Please join me in welcoming Felida.
Thank you, Charlie. Hi, everyone. My name is Felida, and I am wearing an orange shirt. I have a mohawk. It's yellow on top, and I'm wearing headphones, podcast style. In the background, you can see my plant, my many, many, many books, and the cover of my own book, Hood Witch. Yeah. I've got poems. Everyone has been amazing, and it's so good to be able to share space with everyone. When I saw that Foglifter was doing this event, I haven't had a chance to do a reading with Foglifter, so I definitely wanted to participate. I love the journal, and I love putting the journal on my coffee table so that my roommate can find it. And he's always slightly surprised by what's on the cover. Right. First poem is from my book, Hood Witch. Lil' Mama Gets High. Lil' Mama gets high. Remember she got a degree in bitch, please. Minored in proper English, but these white folks still don't know what the fuck she mean when she say, us restless daughters forge under neon lights for leftover liquor and boy meat. Never pretending perfection, we discuss the cons of your heaven, climb concert speakers, and swallow full moons. Petition DJs with our chocolate-filled hips. Make it rain on them. Grind the earth and give you gardens. Rub our legs together and give you smoke. Suck hoodoo down our parched muscle, cough up glitter and gore, sometimes for your amusement, but never for your approval. Us restless daughters have waned on the idea of separation from our spiritual selves, are no longer your cannibals, are no longer your Christians, have gotten into grand discussions about no longer covering up our Bartman bodies, have learned to covet our scars, learn to worship the skin we survive in, question the purpose of religion and other nonsense shit like that, believe in the spirit, the measurable force, like light, pushing and pulling between here and whatever comes after. As restless daughters believe in curated space in our homes, seek out our equals, get lit up, talking about transitions and transformations, get lit up, talking about the scientific evidence of good vibes, get lit up. And that's the problem. We are still wondering how we always manage to end up alone and face down in a pool of gasoline. We have got to love ourselves out here. As restless daughters stone the silence, our black bodies hang from the stars like hot oil under blemished sun, shimmy when everyone else is asleep, dig into ourselves, dig under blocks and blocks of black bodies for fresh water, under the side streets, groan for our broken pipes, our stolen gardens, look for where it all went wrong, dig the ruined parts out, reach inside ourselves because somebody has got to fix the goddamn plumbing in here. Right. I'm gonna skip the next poem. I'm gonna go straight to The Sky Bridge and This Divorce, which is an unpublished poem. It is still in the works. So it may or may not be done. I read it out loud so I can figure that out. So if this was a regular open mic, I'd say new shit. The Sky Bridge in This Divorce. My mother points to the tiles on the floor that face the slow yawn of sliding doors at the entry of Gardena Hospital's infinite wound. Opening, closing, opening. Whistles. Here is where you were born and almost wasn't. I lick at the spot, cooing to myself, it's all right. It's all right. You're going to be fine. I am fine. The year a series of Greyhound buses pull me by my umbilical cord from her lap, tug at me like a leather conduit, tethered to a plane with a photo of my father's feathering face on its helm. Their love, another casket on its way to the Gulf War. For a while, I am fine. I am fine before my father gouges Iraq out of Kuwait, the sand out of the 1990s, before my father begins to sleepwalk through the rocky hills of the decommissioned veteran graveyard known as Copper's Cove, before my father becomes a chronic disorder of dreams deferred, before his chest, unable to lock onto air long enough to keep him breathing while he sleeps, becomes a battered flag hanging just above half-mast, before my father gathers together our aging love, before he devours canteen after canteen of our family's only artillery. I am fine. I am fine for years, before my mother begins to lose her teeth to the slow erosion of her faith in the ever wild of California's South Central, before my mother is domesticated and pretty for church on Sundays, before my mother becomes one half of a new stranger shouting in my house, before the under hours of my childhood turn into nightmares, before I am no longer a child, but a sister wife, a second mother, translating my mother's grief for her half-borns, before my mother buries her hard-earned wisdoms underneath the light of a God with a gift for murder, before I am drowned and reborn in this God's name, I am fine. I am fine for years. The ones that come to me still as an apostrophe of rusted rails and empty brick red seats, their plastic shells tethered together by the steel of my mother's lungs, unchecked in yet another airport terminal. And I don't think this is fine. But now I am always most at home when I am coming home, crossing, uncrossing, crossing any distance between them and now. Now I come attached to the static bustle of escape. I am a plastic disc of goodbye, goodbye, goodbye for good. Point me towards any exit that matters. I will untangle my fat buttered hands from my father's anxious and slippery hands, lean into the act of flying as the first of my mother's flowering clots to dip. Only an etch of a sliding scale, a dollop of acrylic intimacy. I have hated having to hold on to any of this. My empty hands, the belt, the switch, the punishments of my mother's child-shaped punishments, the vintage white of a clear day's cloud, the annual itinerary of our home's insecure seasons, the irreverent split of my uplifted chest, silvered by age and parentless dissonance, this growing black mist of mine. My now indisputable destiny is pain center, my mother, my father, and their children. It has been tiring coming back to myself again. Whenever I'm picking up at the airport now, I hold up a fence. Or the electric tandem of my queer technicolor heritage, I hold up my conditioned love to protect me from their vintage egos. I hold up my hand-churned butter, the good bustle, and air. For them, I've held still in the air for decades. Even so, my mother points to herself lying on a cheap beige carpet like a mask of light, a casualty of gravity, an abandoned conduit of air. Whistles, here is the year I gunned down a man with a face full of feathers, a bed full of leather hides, and instructions on how to not tether ourselves together. And I'm fine. I'm fine. I'll be all right up here. So I have one last poem for you guys. I am working on a second collection, and I thought it was a second collection. Turns out it's like possibly like all the books. So this one is from a book that I'm hoping will examine the Southwest and the shape of the land, as well as the abolitionist goal to end all cages, both mass incarceration and mass migrant detention, and understanding that the fight for equity is not just an American fight. This is a fight for folks who come to America to take part in this land, and the folks who are here and were here before us. And it's a consistent fight, and so we have to work together. And so this one is called A Map of My Want, which is both a literal map and a heart map. A map of my want. 1. We are almost there, I tell the women in my back seat, flexing in endearing poses. The designated driver, they are in my hands. 2 silky lavender-scented chapsticks melting at the chase of my palms. I can still smell them many evolutions later. As a spill of butter, this is how I want to be remembered. Warm and thick, absolved of my fluid response to anyone's ability to churn me out. Once, I was a woman. Am now an arc, a memory of exactly where my sisters sank beneath the ruins of their former selves. A cloud of unclasped bras and empty pockets, our husked love entangled in the cottonwood branches of the Chihuahuan desert. Excised in the open mouth of the corrugated expanse, we are the kind that live in the closets of the coyote willows. From the edge, we surge north, listening to each other drip in the silence of the land between. My sisters and I, sliding against the tilted walls of the highway, like coins in the other pockets, we are mutable shades, sharing the invaluable. The more suns we swallow, the more suns try to swallow us. Would you believe that my first real conversation was with my soiled hands? Me praying the landscape of my irrigated memory is how I know I am from the lake, a dog of the ocean, the sound of myself, lapping the lapping of myself in an unending ritual of salutation and praise for the tangible chaos I wear like tangible galaxies in the skin. I was a woman. Am now an arc, remembering exactly where my sisters and I sank beneath the ruins of ourselves, the loam of our desiccated and unforgiving fatigue, freshly wet with the memories of our first loves, a cloudless mirror filled with the unclasped bras and empty pockets. We surge through south, southwest, north, northeast, listening to each other bleed in the silence of the land in between. 2. My family drove from the clogged skylines of California to the gates of my father's Eden in Texas, his heaven, a continent's worth of dirt and dark potential, a heap of deadwood, dirt, snakes, rabbits, and dogs, with gums that glitter pink in the face of silence. I dreamed the road turned river and I floated as one of 4 spare tires in the backseat of my mama's whirring machine. My mama hadn't liked my cousins teaching me to rotate my hips with my hands in California, round my back when bent over the stairs, with my little nasty ass kicking like an engine in the air. Pop, pop, she said, that's how it happens. That's how you become a factory. I have always been a burden of hours. The flesh-dense memory of my mother's ichor, I was always the language of lost time. A percolating wound, driving through some state or another in search of. Asleep, I floated from the shivering concrete of California, the state where I was originally manufactured, in a city too strung out on murky neon and pasteurized prisoners, where thieves and killers and pot-smoking dogs lived in cages tall and wide estate-owned buildings downtown, where I learned to load a magazine clip before I learned to borrow sugar. We left, and I knew leaving meant no cages for me, but still, I slept through the first part of the drive. I slept through the sound of the other factories I know who were being excised, their steel frames uprooted and moved in the dark into the open mouth of the desert, their candy soft frames easily dying under the coyote willow. When I did finally wake, I was in the belly of Blue Yonder, my body gliding through the tall slate walls of Arizona's wide-hip mountains. I wasn't supposed to know, but I knew that love was like this, a gape in the noise of modern industry, an untested azure, thanking the petroleum that slides through it by holding it in its mouth before graciously swallowing. Love as the sun's underestimated static embedding itself into my rib, my melanin, a patchwork of time. Sometimes they put the detention centers far back from the highway, in the back, like the eggs in Walmart. They want you to buy everything but the land, float by without being deserved. In the Hayes County Jail, there is only one window, and it is the same size as the cheap worn mystery novel I pick up from the book cart the third day. For weeks, I forget what the sun felt like. I forget I was once loved. I forget affection. I pray into a yellow legal pad. I pray into stupid Christian pamphlets. I pray into a steel bed. I pray into my 1 glass of pasteurized milk and orange juice. I am still praying when I look up at the worn TV perpetually floating above our pod to see a wolf's face leaping across the screen on channel 8. A vortex in the static, he dances, his body swiftly looping around something unmoving. I don't see what he is dancing around because I am crying at all the green on the ground. When was the last time I had green? That day, they take us single file out into a half court. Someone grabs the mostly dead basketball. Others start pacing around the box. I slip into poems, soothe myself by muttering rhythmic soliloquies, old photos of myself falling out of my mouth and into my hands. When I am finally released, I make it as far as the gas station a half a block away before ripping stitch. I stand out in the open, suffocating, drowning in the Texas sun, a snake with no nest and no eggs and no good meat. And I'll end there. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Felida. And we've come to the end of our reading, and we just like to thank all of these phenomenal poets for being with us, and all of you in the audience here and through our streaming channels for being here with us as well.
And we just want to remind you to submit to our next issue. We are open until Saturday. And if you like what you heard tonight, please subscribe to Foglifter today. We're going to drop a little link in our chat.
And thank you again for joining us. Have a lovely rest of your nights. Bye-bye.